Okay, students, welcome back. Hopefully that chess piece went well for you. Today we are going to go ahead and we are going to make a coffee mug because you know your teacher is probably addicted to coffee a little bit too much. So we are going to be using the Revolve, which you guys know, you guys have already used it. To do the handle though, we're going to use a Swept Boss base. So we're going to learn how to do that. I am going to also be showing you how to put text on a mug. Text can be tricky when you put text on any curved surface. Sometimes Solidworks struggles with it. And when I say Solidworks, it's probably me that's doing something wrong. But I've had sometimes text goes on curved surfaces great. It's called a wrap function. But sometimes I have struggled with it. But I'd like to show you guys how to do it anyway. All right, so we're going to start out. We're going to go ahead. We're going to check our units first. And I want to be in millimeters for this one. So I'm going to go down to units. Let's change that to millimeters. All right, now, once again, I mean, this is creative. This is your design. You make what you want. If you want to make a fancy little tiny teacup that you have to stick your pinky up while drinking with, awesome, go for it. If you want to make a coffee mug, that's fine too. I've had students build cups with lids on the top. I've had students build them with a cookie container on the bottom that just kind of attached to it so they could have cookies in there as well. All kinds of stuff. Sky's the limit. I'm going to be showing you the basic one though. You design what you feel is best, what you want. So I'm going to be designing on my front plane. I'm going to be using my lines again. Now actually I'm going to change this. My first line, I'm going to make it a center line, basically a construction line. Go ahead and do that. You'll see why in a minute. This line here going vertical, I'm going to make it solid. We're going to revolve around that line so it doesn't matter if it's a construction line or not. Okay. My mug, I'm going to make it 100 millimeters tall. I want it to be 80 millimeters wide. Now this is 82, but I have to cut that in half. I need it 40 millimeters wide because I'm going to revolve around this line right here, and that's going to give me an 80 millimeter wide mug. Now, one thing I'm going to do here, if you've ever taken a look at the bottom of a lot of cups, it's a little interesting. They're not flat on the bottom, and the reason why mugs are not just plain flat on the bottom, there's a little indentation there. It's actually for how they sit on a table. If you try and make it completely absolutely flat, it probably won't be completely flat. There'll probably be some high point, or you could call it a low point in there, and they'll kind of rock and swivel on that. So that's why the bottom of a mug has kind of this shape here, and you'll see it in a moment. Let's make that 30. Let's make that 5. And I'm going to use my spline tool. Zoom in here a little bit and give myself kind of a little lip right there. It's looking pretty good. Finish off the top. Piece in. I want it to be up there. Something is wrong. I definitely have something wrong. See this gap right here? I cannot have that gap. If I have that gap, there's no way that SolidWorks will see that as a region, and I will not be able to revolve it. So I'm gonna go all the way over here. Something's a little bit off because that was 40.02. I bet this angle right here is not completely 90 is what I'm guessing is going on. And that's all right, because we will just make all this perfect. Now that has to be a 90-degree angle right there. Okay. All right, let's see here. I'm going to get rid of the lines that I don't need. So actually I'm going to try revolving it without. But see how this line goes long right here? If it doesn't let me revolve it, it's probably that line right there. So let's see if it can do it or not. I'm going to exit the sketch, go to features, revolve boss base. In selected contours, I want to uncheck thin features. That messed me up before. I want to use that thing, but the axis of revolution is guessing that I want that line to be what I'm revolving it around, and I definitely don't. I want it to revolve around that line right there. Okay. Alright, now that is looking pretty good. And this is what I was talking about down here. They don't have it completely flat on the bottom of a coffee mug, because then they tend to rock a little bit. I'm going to fillet this edge right here just a little bit. I don't like square corners on a coffee mug. I definitely don't want it to be that rounded. I'm going to fillet mine with a 2mm radius. Alright, so looking pretty good. Now, what good is a coffee cup though without a handle? So that's what we're going to do next. You guys are going to learn how to put in planes, perpendicular planes. You're going to learn reference geometry, and you're going to learn swept boss base down there. Okay, so I'm going to go to Sketch. Now we've been using Sketch quite a bit, and it's been working very, very well for us. I think it's going to be easier this time though if we turn on our grid, or we display our grid. So I'm going to go up here, Document Properties, and Grid, and Display Grid. It just makes it a little bit easier when you hit Sketch. It's going to make it easier to see what you're actually sketching on. Okay, now these are all curved surfaces, so it's much more difficult if I'm going to close that down again just to show you, make sure you see it. There was a little plus there, so I hit the little plus, and I have extra things here that I can choose. Before, we've always done a sketch on a plane, but here, just like the first sketches that we could do, now we can sketch on the front, the top, or the right plane. Now we started at the origin. We spun this thing around the origin, so I know the origin's really in the middle, and that's going to make life a whole lot easier for us. So in this case, I'm going to put a handle. I'm going to put a handle right about here. So I want to sketch on the front plane. Put a grid on it, which is good. If I kind of tweak that, we can see, that grid is kind of going right through the middle of our piece, and that's exactly what we want it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and use my spline tool. I'm just going to eyeball what I would think a good handle would be. I'd say that looks good right there. Okay, now remember, we have all these points right here. You can pin those down. You can smart dimension to all those points. If you want to add it, you get the little arrows if you click on it, and you can move those little arrows around and just make it exactly what you want it to be. Okay, now just real quick, and this is for the next step actually, I'm going to put a center line in the middle of our mug, just so I know exactly where the middle is. And I'm going to put a line coming here going to the center line. You'll see in a minute why I did that. Yeah, it'll make more sense later on. So that's all we want for that sketch. Okay, I'm going to exit sketch. You can do it here or right there. Both of those will exit the sketch. And so we have something going along well where we want our handle to be. In order to use swept boss base, we need a shape. So we're going to draw a shape down here in a different sketch, and that shape, you can think about it, will just come swept boss base. It'll just follow this right here, and it'll just follow that contour. It'll make material as it follows the contour. So to do that though, we need to do a sketch. Click on sketch. No, we don't want that sketch. We want to make a new sketch. Alright, so we're going to make a new sketch. Hit the plus sign here again. Now this time we don't want the same plane. That's one of the biggest things I see students do. They make their new shape, the shape of the handle, like the thing that's going to follow this line right here, the contour of the handle, they make it on the same plane. You don't want it on the same plane. You don't want it on the front plane. You don't want it on the top plane. In this case, I want it in the right plane because that plane is perpendicular to my handle. Okay? So you got this guy right here. This is where the handle, the line for the contour of the handle, this is where it comes on in. Let's see here. Toying with, do I want to use this guy right here, a slot? I don't think so. I'm going to use this guy. You could just do a circle, and a circle will work very, very well. I'm going to do an ellipse just because I want to. So I'm going to make my ellipse. And first click where the center is. Second click basically how big I want it to be. That didn't work. Let's try this one again. I got to get it right on that point right there. There we go. Now I'm getting it. Alright. That's a pretty good ellipse right there. Okay. So first click the center. Second click is basically the radius. Third click, you're basically squishing it down from a circle to be an ellipse. Okay. That does look good, maybe a little bit small. I'm gonna make that, let's see what it looks like if it was 10. Yep, I like 10 better. And then you can also, you could change it if you wanted to change the radius a little bit, change where the position is, stuff like that. One thing I would like to do, I'm going to put a center line from this side to that side of the eclipse. If you look at it, it's not parallel with my mug. It's a little bit off. It's a little bit skewed. And so I just quick connected the sides of my ellipse with a construction line, a center line, so it's not going to change anything. Now I'm going to click on that little line and I'm going to make it horizontal. Now my ellipse is going to be completely horizontal with the top and the bottom of my mug. Okay, so we are getting there. We have the contour that we want this ellipse to follow, and we have the ellipse, and the ellipse is perpendicular to the contour. I'm going to go outside of my sketch. That's really important. You cannot do swept boss base if you're inside the sketch. Let's take another look at it. That looks pretty good. Looks nice and perpendicular and all. I'm going to go to features. Now I'm going to do swept boss base. Okay. Now there's two things it needs. It needs a profile and it needs a path. Okay. The profile is the ellipse that we made right there. Okay. So I click on that. It says sketch 3. Yep, that's exactly right. Now the path is the handle itself. Okay. Now remember, that's why we put that line right there. We connected the path. Okay. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to get hit the check to make it so. And we have a beautiful mug handle on our coffee mug. Okay. Now, this next thing I would like to just show you guys. This is more just for learning purposes. I want to put words on this thing. Okay, so we're gonna put words on it, then we're gonna hollow it out because right now this coffee mug will not hold any coffee, and that's sad. So we got this thing right here. I'm gonna do, still in features, we want to do a sketch, but we're gonna do a sketch off the surface. So we have to do reference geometry. Click down on there, we're gonna make a plane. Okay, so we want a new plane to be able to sketch on. All right, so it's saying where do we want the plane, what references do we want for that plane. I'm gonna hit that positive right there again, so we could do front, not the top, or the right. If you wanted it on this side of the mug, you would do it on the right. If you want it on the side of the mug, you would do it on the front plane. I would like mine on the front plane right there. So that's just a reference. Now we are creating a plane in reference to the front plane. Right now it just created it 10 millimeters off. Well, that's not in front of the mug. I'm just going to keep popping this thing up until the plane is off the surface. It's not on the mug at all. That's where we want that new plane to be. So I'm going to hit it. We just created a plane. You can see it right there. It's called plane 1. Okay. Now I'm going to go straight into sketch. And if I just hit sketch, it's going to sketch it. See how plane 1 is highlighted? It's going to sketch right on top of that plane. All right. Go down here. Boom. All right. Now this time I'm actually going to use my text tool. So I'm going to open up my text tool. And I'm going to start typing right on here. You can see right here where we can text it or put the text in. World's best boss. Okay. Now put it down there. That's a little bit of a bummer. We're going to have to change some stuff about that. See how it's following my cursor wherever I click? That's where it's going to go. Now it locks it into the document font. If you undo that, then you can go into fonts. You can change different stuff. This is one of the few times I'd actually suggest students use Comic Sans. Usually Comic Sans is really, really frowned upon. Be very careful with what fonts you get. The more frilly and curly and cutesy and stuff like that fonts that you get, the harder it is for Solidworks to actually put it on a surface, especially a curved surface, because you'll end up with gaps, you'll end up with intersecting points, stuff like that, and it's just going to struggle. That's one of the easiest ways to go sideways, is to use a really wild font on a curved surface. Okay, units, that's a little small. Those letters are a little small. You can do points, or you can do how big you want them to be. Let's try 10. Yep, 10 looks pretty good. I'm gonna center it well. I've never had a good, I'm sure someone out there can figure it out and tell me why, but I've never had a good, by trying to center it this way, by clicking that, highlighting it and clicking it. So I just kind of use spaces to go ahead and center the stuff. And that looks pretty off. And there I go and click off my coffee mug. All right, that looks pretty good. If I want it better, I can get in a center line. I also want to show you curves. If you had a curve already in there, you could choose that curve here, and then the words that you type will actually follow that curve. That's another way to get things really, really centered, really exactly where you want it to be. Okay, so we got text, world's best boss, but it's hovering. It's hovering in front of our coffee mug. Okay, take a look at straight on again. Okay. All right. Now what we want to do is we want to go to features. Oh, and we want to wrap. Wrapping right now, it's not a option because we're in the sketch. You have to be outside of the sketch to be able to wrap. Just like you have to be outside the sketch to do swept boss base, you have to be outside of the sketch to wrap. So now that I'm outside the sketch, I can click wrap. Emboss, deboss, or scribe. Scribe just writes it right on it. Emboss brings the letters out from the surface. Deboss will cut the letters into the surface. I'm going to try deboss just for fun. Okay, so they're only going to go in 1 millimeter. Let's make that 2 millimeters. All right, now, so our sketch, I already said, yep, we want sketch 4 to be what we want. For this, for the surface, we're going to click on the surface of the mug. Now, you can see what it did is it just took it and it just wrapped it. It wrapped it right onto the mug itself. I'm going to hit that nice little check right there. Now, this is the computer thinking. It's grinding through. Like this takes a decent amount of computing to be able to do that. And you can see we just debossed that straight into the mug right there. Okay. Last thing we need to do is put the hole in the top so it can actually carry some coffee, which will be a nice thing. Okay. Do that. Once again, we always start at the origin. It's so important to, as I just say, we always start at the origin. I just clicked off of the origin. Okay. always start at the origin because now our circles are going to line up so well. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Features, cut it. My mug is 100 millimeters tall, so let's just make that 90 millimeters so that we have some space in the bottom and everything doesn't fall out. Looks pretty good. I like that bottom. It's gonna resist rocking pretty well. Now up here, I would never want to drink out of something that is that sharp on that corner. So I'm gonna fillet that one, 2 millimeters, looks good. We can also fillet the inside as well, right there, maybe. Yep. And so we made those two surfaces curved. And you can even fill in material. You could even fillet that ring right there. Alright? So you can see on the inside, it just kind of made an easy, nice, curved surface right there. I think that looks pretty good. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to show you. Yep, there is. Right here, this guy, okay? Right now we're showing the surfaces and we have all the lines, the vertices highlighted. Now, if you 3D printed that, you would not see that line that easily. And so you could go, and now this is just the surfaces. You can see what it would look like if it was just the surfaces, taking those lines out. I like it, keeping my lines in there. I think it just makes it easy, but before you go to print something, it's good to take the lines out just to see what it's going to look like. And that's what it looks like with only those lines, all the hidden lines. I don't even know what this one does. Looks like it's all the hidden lines, all the lines, everything as well. But I definitely like the CAD in that display right there. So good. Hope you learned something. This was quite a bit. We learned, and my main goal that I wanted you guys to know is swept boss base to do this handle right here. It's tough, but it's definitely possible. Okay, if you learned how to wrap text onto a curved surface, that's great too. But the big thing I wanted you guys to understand is swept boss base. Thank you so much.